Good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. We're going to get started. Thank you so much. I needed the mic to be a little bit louder. I thought if I stood up, I'd get your attention better. So I'd just like to welcome you to our keynote address for this evening, where we will be discussing building winning team cultures. I'm Zoe Ramushu, and I will be moderating the session for us this evening. And I'd like us to just give a warm welcome to Chris Washburne, Megan Griffith, and Harry West. Let's give them a round of applause. So thank you so much for making the time to join us this evening. And I think what we're going to be discussing this evening is such a pertinent area of interest, because I think whatever industry you work in, whatever space you're in, you have to work with other people, and you need to build teams. And so when the thought process with this panel was not to speak about it from a one-dimensional, one industry perspective, but to have individuals who are working in completely different spaces, discussing how they build teams, how they see what teams need, and how they deal with challenges as well, in terms of just building teams and, most importantly, winning teams. So as they speak, you'll get to understand a little bit more about what they do, what their backgrounds are, and I think we're going to have a really good and interesting conversation. So I'll start my questions with you, Chris, this evening. When you hear the term building a winning team, like a winning team culture, what comes to mind, not as a concept, but more as a lived experience, something that you've experienced personally?
Thank you for that, and welcome, everyone. I'm so pleased to be here. For those of you who don't know, I'm a jazz musician, and I'm also a professor here at Columbia. I'm the chair of the music department, and I was the one who started the jazz performance program, which is now the biggest jazz performance program in all of the Ivies, and definitely the best. But I also have a nightlife, and I have been playing professionally in New York City now for almost 40 years, playing with many of the jazz greats and also leading my own bands. And I remember when I was first approached to be on this panel, the idea of a winning team made me step back for a moment, because, jazz is not a competitive sport. It's an art form, although competition plays like a serious role in our performances, but like no one keeps score at the end of the night. And I was just trying to figure out what it would mean to think about that. And I realized that the most impactful jazz groups share a few things in common. And the first thing is trust. It's a team that trusts one another. Why? Because our professional mandate is to create something new every time we go to work. And that means daily innovation. And if we don't, we get fired. Like, seriously, you lose your job if you didn't come up with something new on the bandstand. And so in order to be able to do that, you need a highly functioning team to actually collectively come up with a vision and innovate together. So trust is really important. But that also means that winning teams also have fluid leadership. It's not, there may be somebody who is the star, but even those stars, as soon as the band plays, that pyramidic structure flattens, and it flattens in really unique ways. And I call it a fluid leadership style or a model. Some people call it situational. But the idea is that anybody can step up and be a leader anytime they dare, and we need that, and you need to have that trust and respect from each one of those individuals. So for me, that was it. It was the trust, the respect, and the ability to really hear one another and value each individual on that team in a way, despite their different roles in a band, that we value their diverse voices and what they uniquely have to contribute. And as soon as you have that music's going to be killing.
Thanks for that. Megan, we'll come to you, and I know you've had various experiences here at Columbia as a student, and then now you're back. I'll let you introduce yourself in that way. What's a personal lived experience for you, like, or a moment that you remember where you were like, okay, this is a definition of like winning team culture?
Well, I'm very humbled to be here. Number one, I have very accomplished people sitting to my left and my right, and this is just amazing to have people coming back together because they love this place so much. And huge shout out first. I'm going to give our team and my staff is here and some special visitors, so we're going to give them a big shout out. And I think that's where I was going to go with this. Is it's really people that you live your life with, right? And you know, I'm the basketball coach here at Columbia University. I've been back. Thank you. I graduated here. I went to undergraduate. I was a Columbia College alum of 2007. And I've been back, yes, I've been back proudly since 2016 as the head coach of the women's basketball team. And, you know, in my own personal journey, I've always been around great people that made me better. And that sometimes was the form of my parents. That was my sister at times. That was, you know, my teammates. That was anybody that kind of helped me through a hard time or a happy time or a good time or a sad time, right? And what I noticed in all these accumulation of moments was that it just wasn't about what I was doing, but it was about who I was sharing it with. And I think you're really only strong as your team, and you're really only as strong as the people sitting literally to your left, right, front, and back. And we say that a lot with our program, right, is that it's not about number one, it's about number 13 or 16 or however many people are part of your program. So from my lived experience, honestly, it's just been since I was from a very young age, you know, I wasn't always the most talented. I was definitely not the tallest, right? I had a big heart, and when I got focused, direct attention, and somebody that believed in me, I could do many things, and I could accomplish great things. And so that was really important to me, and honestly, that's why I'm coaching. You know, my whole life's mission and my why, my purpose is to affect positive change in these young women's lives. And, you know, the best gift that I've gotten from that is to be changed as well and allow myself to change with them. So for me, that's what winning team culture means, and I'm just excited to be here to share that with you all today.
And I'll come to you, Harry, and ask you the same thing. If you can define what you, from a personal experience, even if you can give me a tangible moment when you've thought, okay, this is team culture, in effect, it's working, and this wouldn't have happened if we didn't have a great team.
Sure. So let me introduce myself. And what I do is nowhere near as much fun as the people to my right. So I'm kind of like a little bit of job envy here because you're in sport and music and filmmaking, and I'm a designer. I design products and services. So I started off. Oh, thank you. I started off a long time ago designing products and services at a little design firm in Boston. And we had some impact. We created Swiffer for Procter & Gamble. We created Thermacare. We created Windows for Anderson Windows. We created packaging and padlocks and medical devices. So there's probably somebody in this room with diabetes. We created the Insulet Omnipod, for example. Normally when I have a class, somebody in my class is wearing it, which makes me feel very good. And then I moved on to other even bigger design firms. I worked for a little company called Frog, where we designed customer experiences. We designed the digital experience of BNY Mellon Bank. We designed the we did entertainment. We designed part of Disney World. That's fun. And all manner of the Magritte exhibit at MoMA San Francisco, apps and banking experiences, insurance, everything that makes up a person's life, we would try to design and make better. And I think that is a really valuable, important thing to do, because that is our life. That's the experience of our life as a person. Is everything we touch, everything we feel. That's our life. And as a designer, we're creating those things that you touch and feel. But also, a lot of the stuff that we create, that you touch and feel, ends up in landfills. And so I was feeling kind of bad about that. And I was thinking, well, I would like to, after you sold the last company, I was thinking, I would really like to focus now on selling less, not more. Getting people to buy less, not more, which is a really tricky commercial proposition when you think about it. So, I go to work for a university. So that's what brings me here. So I'm now a professor of practice at Columbia Engineering. And I teach our students how to create something that somebody's going to be willing to buy. That's the core skill I teach. That's important to somebody. But on the side, I'm also working on trying to figure out how do we get people to not buy so much. So I'm working at two ends on this. But your question's about leadership and culture. And so in the various companies I've worked with, I have seen different types of culture. I've worked in a company where it's just about the money. That's the only reason people are there. And that's okay. And I think there are some businesses for which maybe that's the right thing, is optimizing money. And some where it's just about winning. That's it. I guess you're in the winning business, aren't you?
We are. Yes, we are.
And that's good too. And for some, it's about self-actualization, I think. Maybe that's part of what you do, right? I think, Chris. And then for some, it's about helping somebody else. And at the design firms I've run, what the culture I've tried to build is that our job is to help somebody else. And that if we can all agree that that is our job, then we can all work together. And if you're here for another purpose, then this might not be the right place for you to work in the long run. And by aligning around, you're not here to work for me, even though I'm the boss. You're here to work for the consumer, the customer, the citizen, the person you're trying to create a product or service to help. Then that flattens the organization. Because everybody now has a voice in what is the right thing to do. And even if you are higher up in the hierarchy, if somebody understands better what the consumer, the customer, the citizen needs, then their voice is as important as anybody else's in the company. And that's the culture that we try to build.
Mm. That actually takes me to my next question, Harry. I'll bring it back to you, Chris. So you touched on how you the kind of people you want in your team. Chris, when you are hiring, or not hiring, putting together a band or a team, what do you base it on? Is it skills? Is it values? Is it personality? Is it a combination? How do you select your teams?
It's definitely hiring.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're in the business of jazz. But thank you for that question. It's an important one because the hiring process is actually the most important part of my job. Because if I choose the wrong folks, then we can't function as a team. So there are two components to it. First of all, I'm looking for experts in what they do, in their instruments. What does an expert in jazz mean? Well, they can play their instruments, they understand the history, they understand the language of the music, and they know so much of the history and have absorbed that and can use that as the raw materials to innovate and take the music forward. But it's not the experts that Malcolm Gladwell used to talk about. He's reneged. But the 10,000-hour experts where you do 10,000 hours and then you're an expert and you're just like, okay, I'm done. No, you never want anybody like that in any organization or any team because that's death. It's innovative death. We want those experts that realize that expertise is developed over a lifetime. and they continue to grow because you want them to come into your team and enrich you by the new experiences that they've been having in their own lives. This is New York City, though. This is like the center of the jazz industry, and that defines about 10,000 musicians. And so it's the next level then that makes even a greater difference. And that I'm looking for something that's called a generosity of spirit. Now, what do I mean by a generosity of spirit? First of all, if you think about the definition of what we do, we stand up in front of strangers night after night in jazz clubs all around the world, taking huge musical risks in order to come up with something new. I need confidence. I need people that are confident, and I need people that are assertive in their confidence. They need to have strong egos, but they understand the difference between a strong ego used as a tool as opposed to becoming egotistical. Because as soon as a musician becomes egotistical, it breaks down the team, and then we have to adopt a different model. It's no longer called jazz, it's called pop music. I mean, seriously, like if Taylor Swift or Beyonce hire you for a gig, it's to amplify their story. It's not about your own artistry that's there. It's only for their vision. By the way, I'm free if you know them and they're looking for a trombone player. So it can't be egotistical. It has to be strong. At the same time, though, and this is where it gets complicated, I need people with empathy. And not just like normal empathy, not even radical empathy, but virtuosic empathy. And not just that, but an empathic intelligence. The idea is that they come night after night onto the bandstand and they can feel where everyone is, emotionally, artistically, musically, philosophically, and use that as the raw materials to create something truly beautiful, which means they not only can feel it, but they understand the appropriate response to it in order to amplify one another on the team. And all of a sudden, those 10,000 musicians in New York have now shrunk to a very small, special number that I want on my team. And as soon as you have empathy in a team, you have trust. Because you feel heard. You play a lick and everybody hears it and they amplify it and give you a better idea to how to make it even better than it was. As soon as you feel heard, you know you can trust them. You know they respect you. And you're on the path to making something truly beautiful.
Thank you for that, Chris. Yeah. You know, I'm really like processing it as you're speaking. I'm like feeling heard in whatever team, you know. You say it in a literal sense, heard because it's music, but it's also feeling like you're heard in the team setup. And so, Meg, I'll come to you to ask how you put your teams together. We all know that there's a baseline. You have to have some athleticism. You're not taking in people just, you know, because they've got a kind heart. But what do you look for? Because when, you know, you have your tryouts, there's a lot of people there who've got a lot of heart, a lot of skill, and all of that. What is it that catches your eye and says, this is someone that I need in my team? How do you build your team? And with that, I want you to also kind of answer, do you build your team like a family? Is it like a system? Like how are you putting it together?
So it's so funny hearing people from different industries speak that are extremely passionate about what they do and wildly successful, because we do the same things when you really think about it. And Chris, it's so funny. I'm watching our players listen to you speak, and you're seeing them nod their heads, writing down what you're saying. And it's amazing because what you do is what I do. I just do it with a bunch of 18 to 22-year-olds. And that's what's also a beauty and a gift about our profession. And also what you said, Harry, too, about just getting everybody to buy in, understanding what the purposes you're serving. These are the things that we talk about all the time with our players. So in terms of, you know, how we build a team, right? So we actually are hoping to add somebody in this audience to our family soon. But we, you know, when we build a team, we really look at a few things. Like there's base level talent, and obviously, but we watch thousands and thousands of high school players, domestically and internationally, play basketball, right? And at that point in their careers, they're anywhere from 15 to 17 or 18 years old, right? So you're not watching them for who they are at the face value. You're watching them for who they can be. And that's a skill in itself. And it's not the professional, like Chris is he's hiring the professionals, like you're the best of what you do. And what we're doing is we're trying to say, hey, yes, that is, of course, we want the best of the best at age 17 or 18, but we know, hey, this is where you can take your ceiling. This is where you can raise your floor. And that's really what you're trying to look for, is the people that are on board for that mission, right? So we talk a lot about being process focused versus outcome focused. And I think those are the most successful players that we've had in our program history. And understanding that failure is going to happen, right? We talk a lot about fail fast, fail forward, crave feedback. You know, we're living in a society where feedback is given instantaneously, right? Through different avenues on your phone, especially. And the generation that we're recruiting has grown up with that, and they literally get it like that every day, every minute, if they're locked in. So what we try to do is say, hey, it's not about that. It's not about instant gratification. We're talking about delayed gratification and what that looks like. And so people that are on board for that mission, that's who we're really looking for. Because we know we can get the most out of you. Like, that's something I sit down with each of them and I tell them that when we recruit them. I was like, this place is going to change your life. Our staff, these people are going to change your life. Do you want that too? Right? Because it's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard, and are you committed? Are you going to be committed to that journey? Not right now, but are you going to be committed to it when we face adversity, right? And all the other things start happening in your life. So the people that are on board for that, that's who I'm looking for. And of course, the talent, the skill, all those different things, that's obviously how you build a basketball team and you win. But, I think winners don't just win in basketball, they win in life. And that's really important. So I'm looking for players that win in the classroom. I'm looking for players that win in their families. I'm looking for people that win in their communities, right? Because to me, that's how we're going to build a winning championship culture team. And then in terms of, I'm sorry, your last question was...
Do you build like a system?
Yes, or a family. Yes.
I mean, you already referred to them as your family. So.
What do you guys think? Family, yeah. So, I mean, for me, I spend more time with these people than I do with my own personal family, which that sounds crazy to a lot of people in this room, but it is 1,000% true. And I love them like they're my own children. I love my staff like my sisters and my brothers. And, you have to choose wisely. You said it, hiring is absolutely critical in our industry as well, because this profession is a lifestyle, just like yours are as well. You commit so much of your life's work to what you do, and you do it well. That's how winners win, right? So absolutely family first. We talk a lot about that. We say, like, work hard, play hard, love hard. And if you can't have all three of them, it's not going to work in this program. So, yeah.
Nice. And Harry, you did touch on purpose being one of your drivers in terms of who you bring into your team. What does it look like for you? Because you've built a number of different teams. What is it? Have they looked different, or is it the same thing that you're kind of looking for each time?
So there's a difference between building a team from scratch, where you can have much more control of the people coming in. So let me talk about that a little bit. As Chris described, there's a kind of ticket to play skill that you have to have for any job. And so in the design business, there's a sort of basic level of creativity that we're looking for in any candidate. But there's lots and lots of really great designers out there, and they should all have jobs, but not necessarily in our company. And so we're trying to figure out which ones should be working in our company versus which ones should be working in another company. Well, up until now, there's always been plenty of work to go around. So in addition to creativity, we're looking for communication skills too, because when you're working as part of a team and you're working part of an interdisciplinary team, then your ability to explain to somebody why you think this is the right thing to do is as important as your ability to recognize the right thing to do. So some people feel things but struggle with communicating that, and struggle with other people trying to communicate that on their behalf. But that is really important in the sort of creative teams that I have worked on. And then there's kind of a level of caring that is probably the most important, because if we're designing for other people, then you have to care about the experience of other people more than you care about you getting this really cool idea out there. Cool is not important. Caring is more important than that in the sort of design that I have worked in. And that's what I try to bring into my classes at Columbia too, is to have the students engage with somebody outside their normal life, interview them, talk with them, think about what their experience is, and then care about their life so that you could create something that makes their life better. So that's what I tried to do.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm going to pick up on that, taking us into my next question, which is like, how do you define success for your teams? You know, you've talked about a number of products that you've created. You know, top of mind is the one around diabetes, and you're saying that for your teams, you want people to care. It's not about cool, right? It's about getting the product created, right, and changing people's lives. So how do you define success for your various products?
Okay, so this is where it gets a little bit uglier, okay? But as Chris pointed out, if you don't deliver, you don't get paid, okay? And so part of your job as a leader, I think, is to make sure that everybody understands that. And that the basic model that we have in the design business, and it's kind of the basic model for how most companies work, is our job is to understand what a consumer or customer, citizen, somebody who's ultimately going to be paying us, what do they need, what do they want, and deliver for them. Because if you deliver for them, then my client, who's paying me, they succeed. And if they succeed, then they pay me, and they'll come back again. And everybody has a job, and everybody has the privilege of having done good work. They have the opportunity to do more good work in the future. Where it gets a little bit ugly is when not everybody's on board with that equation. But ultimately, if we don't deliver, then we don't get paid.
Got you. And I would like to move on to you, Megan, on that. Obviously, winning is, you know, there's a scoreboard to kind of tell you who won and who didn't. But what other ways do you define success, you know, in terms of, okay, this is a great team that we've got?
Similarly, if we don't win, I could lose my job. So thankfully that hasn't happened. But you know, I think in terms of how we define winning and how we define success, right? When I first came back here, you know, a dear friend of mine, an alum, she used to joke with me that we were the 400th team in Division I women's basketball, and there's only 360 some teams, right? So, and I knew I had a tall task when I came back in 2016, and, you know, talking about starting from scratch, right? Like, we just had to, it was a blank canvas. We had to completely redo everything that we did and teach and learn. Through that, there was a lot of growth and pain and a lot of triumph too. But for me, early on in my career here, success wasn't about winning games at all. It was, again, going back to the process, and it was how much momentum can we create in each moment we're together. Right? That means momentum on the basketball court. That means momentum in the locker room, momentum in the classroom. Because I was like, if we can't be winning in these other parts that are very controllable, you know, the wins and losses, they're going to come. Like, we have to trust the process. We have to trust each other. I have to trust my staff, right, that we're going to get the right people here. But it was about, like, all the other things that we do in life. Because, again, I don't think winners just win when the game's on the line. You know, I say that a lot. We win at practice. We win in the summertime. We win the season before, right? With all these little deposits you're making for the person and the people that you want to become. So how we define success now that we have become relevant and we have been in the conversation for top 25, top 30, playing an NCAA tournament, all of these amazing things that we've been doing, it's still not about winning for me, actually winning basketball games, right? Yes, that is success, and that's what keeps my job, thankfully, is that we have one, right? But winning for me is, are we doing it the right way? Are we stacking days correctly? Are we creating more momentum than we ever have before? Because there's always a step to take. And in my mind, growth is infinite. But it depends on how you look at that, right? What you said I loved. The 10,000 hour rule of being a master at something, right? I don't believe in that either. It's like there's always a new way to learn. There's always a new way to improve who you are, what you're looking to do. And I say this often. I think winning for me and success is about getting the same people or the right people in the same boat, rowing in the same direction with the same mission. And if we're doing that, now we're winning.
Nice. So I'm going to come to you, Chris. You know, success is happy client, everybody still got their job. You know, scoreboard, everybody still got their job. What does success look like for you?
All of the above. Well, there's success in a few different metrics. There's the more boring ones, which is that downloads, views, you know, how many albums are sold. By all means, buy in bulk and consume widely. And bookings and opportunities, all of these things are important. There's awards, there's Grammy Awards and Grammy nominations and things like that. But as a musician, that's all really boring to me, though a necessity in my business. And so you do want clients that are happy, people that have paid you to play, and you've delivered. But then within the dynamic of the jazz band, it's a whole different set of things that really gear us towards success. And I think that it's each night there's a different metric, but the one thing that's important is that were we able to reach just beyond our abilities and do something truly unique for the audience and for ourselves. And on top of that, more so, while we were doing it, were we so deep in it that we lost ourselves in a way that is oftentimes referred to as this flow state. Because jazz musicians, we live in the present. We perform in the present. Like, when you're on stage, the past and the future doesn't matter. Those record sales and those downloads don't matter. The only thing that matters is the moment that you're in. And you all need to be so in it that you stay relevant. Because as soon as you're not fully in it, like, let's say you have performance anxiety. That's like the future tense. That's musical death. Or you're thinking about something that happened earlier in the day. That's the past tense. You can no longer play. You have to be in that present state. There was one very famous gig where there was a psychologist in the audience. His name was Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. And the band was killing that night. And he came up afterwards and he said, "What is it like to be playing on that level?" And the word that was most often chosen by those jazz musicians was we start to play, and then it's like we're no longer playing, but the music is just flowing through us. And that's why he chose the word flow, to talk about that state when you're so deep into something you lose track of time. Now, you've all experienced this, whether you've read his writings or not. It's like when you see an old friend and you go out to dinner, and all of a sudden it's 2 a.m., where'd the night go? Or you're at work and you're so deeply engaged in a project or in a game, and you're so deeply in it, and all of a sudden it's the final buzzer. Where'd the time go? Those represent the most fulfilling and happiest moments in our lives. It's usually when we're with intimate partners or people we love or our best friends or people that are really special in our lives that we experience this state. But jazz musicians realize that it is a skill that can be refined, and when we play, we must be in that flow state the entire time that we are working. And if we are, that is the greatest metric for success when we play.
Amazing. Yeah, that takes some time to process. Like, yeah, fantastic. And so I think, just to let you know, in about 5 minutes, I am going to open it up for the Q&A, so prepare your questions mentally. But just after that, I have to say, I know all of you up here have been selected because you are the most perfect leaders and you've never made any mistakes in your entire lives. However, we must talk about challenges, that you've experienced. And I'd love it if you could be open and transparent, because I think that's what helps people when it's like, what is one of the toughest challenges you've had? And how did, with a team, and how did you overcome that challenge? And I'd like you each to kind of answer that. I'll start with you, Chris.
Oh, great. It's never happened. I don't know.
I didn't think it would.
What did Samuel Beckett say? Life is just a series of failures, and then you die. But all we can hope for is that every time we fail better. And in some ways, you can conceive of jazz music as like just a series of failures night after night. And what matters is what happens when those failures happen. When you have people that are taking risks, things are going to happen. Bad things are going to happen. Train wrecks are going to happen. There's a very famous story. It's not mine. I wish it was, because it was in the Miles Davis band, and I'm still waiting for his call. And it was in the 1960s. And Herbie Hancock had just been hired. He was a young 22-year-old musician. Many of you know him now, but no one knew him at that point. It was his first big break. And he's on the bandstand. Miles Davis is the biggest jazz star of the day. And they are on their first tour. And in the middle of Miles Davis's solo, Herbie Hancock plays a chord that could not be justified in any musical universe ever. It was just so blatantly wrong. And he hit it, and he froze. And he said, "Oh, my God, I'm going to get fired. This was horrible." And with us, in a split second, Miles Davis changed what he was playing on the trumpet in such a way to make that chord sound beautiful. Herbie was stunned. He froze. He couldn't play for a while. And afterwards, he was still worried. Miles Davis never said anything to him after the gig. And he kept playing with him for the next 5 years. And it took him a while to process what had just happened. So if you think about that professional mandate that we have to create something new, in some ways, Herbie Hancock did Miles Davis a favor. They've been playing that song hundreds of times. You would have never expected that sound at that moment, and therefore that's the opportunity that Miles took to create something new. Herbie came to realize that Miles did not hear it as a mistake. He heard it as a new presence. Jazz musicians love the phrase, "it is what it is," meaning it's the present. Instead of affixing blame, what are we going to do with it? They also realize there is always opportunity in dissonance. And if you're an investor, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You're going to make money when things are not going as planned. But if you can also think about the entire history of invention, which I'm not the expert on this panel about, but there's so many examples where incredible inventions that changed the world came from mistakes. And so jazz musicians, I think, have a different relationship to failure than a lot of other industries. Yeah, there's certain failures that deserve someone to get fired, absolutely. But as long as you try to make something out of that failure, out of that dissonance, then it's an opportunity to grow and grow together. And in order to be able to do that, what Miles Davis was doing was not stopping the band and turning to Herbie Hancock and firing him on the spot, which I have seen other band leaders do, but instead decided to caretake. And caretake that young musician and make the music more important than anybody else on that stage. And that's a lesson that I've always learned and used. And I try to hire folks so that when I do occasionally make a mistake, I get a musical hug instead of a punitive call out like, "Yo, what's up?"
I love that. So we'll start taking questions after Harry's response, so you can start coming down once we get to Harry. But for now, Megan, how do you deal with conflict and challenges as a leader? You've been part of a team, you've seen conflict, you've seen challenges, but now you're in the driver's seat, in the leadership seat. How do you deal with that?
Well, there's a lot of conflict and confrontation and things that happen in a competitive sport. I think What I love about what all of us do, and especially hearing you talk, Chris, it feels so similar to what I do. It really does. And dissonance, we call that, insert any event, right? It's not, I always say it's not what the outcome is, right? But your responses dictates half of what that outcome is going to be, at least, right? And if you have a strong response to an event that happens, or dissonance, right, you can change the actual outcome versus relying on whatever the outcome is and letting that drive your response. And so for us, it's so much more about leaning into hard, right? You know, I'm a big, like, lean into the hard. Like, we feel a little bit of that friction. Like, let's go after that. Like, what happened there? Why'd you do that? You know, ask questions, be curious. That's something that I've learned has been super helpful for teams. Is if we run from that, if we're afraid to have conflict, right? It's actually not the healthiest thing, because at some point that's going to come back up again, and then what are we going to do in that moment? There's probably going to be some sort of a blow up. And what we do, I mean, it's extremely demanding. It's physically, mentally, emotionally. Like, I give so much credit to the people that do this every day. You know, I did it in my life, but I think now women's sports is on a completely different level. And, you know, they've put themselves in amazing spaces to be in the places that we are. But, you know, they have to not only think about what they're doing, but as they're physically moving their bodies and they're working and they're competing, they have to think about how they're going to respond, how they're going to react, how they're going to insert themselves in the moment of conflict or controversy. And, you know, that's what we try to teach them a lot, is how to handle those moments and not run from them, but run into them. And, you know, it's going to be messy, but that's okay, right? And there's going to be blow-ups. You're going to have somebody, you know, going toe-to-toe with somebody times, but I think that's all very healthy. And I think for women especially, it's really healthy, because we are told by society not to do that.
Everything.
Sit down, withhold what you say or what you think. You have to look right and ready for all the moments. And that's what I love, is that you don't have to when you're playing the sport of basketball. Specifically, that's obviously what we do, but, you know, just competition in general, I think, brings out compassion. That's the one thing I always think about when I think about competition, is compassion. And I don't know if our players would think that or say that, but that's what I love about it. You know, whenever I'm doing something competitive in my life, if I was learning jazz, like, Chris, I'm so ready to take some lessons, man. Yeah. Are you ready? You're locked in. Okay. Yeah. And if I'm doing anything competitive in my life, there's something immediate about that connects you with the other human. And leaning into that compassion, to me, whatever that looks like through the competition, the controversy, the conflict, the good times, the bad times, I think that's what makes what we do so special. So, yeah, handling conflict and controversy for us is just, I think it's absolutely necessary to what we do.
Great, thank you for that, Megan. So Harry, I'm going to come to you and ask you, I know you're mostly in the corporate space, so I'm not sure if there's anyone going toe-to-toe with anyone at any time, but how do you guys deal with conflict? And can you maybe give us an example of one challenge that you experienced and how you dealt with that?
Sure. There is conflict in the corporate space. Yeah. So let me give two examples. So which relate to the question of how do you think of your team? Do you think of them as a family? And to some extent, we do. For example, I remember a few years ago. Actually, it was 12 years ago. I was in a meeting with a team, with a client, very prestigious client in Manhattan, and it was a high-stakes project for this client. And the client started being abusive to some of the junior team members.